Hey guys, welcome back, or welcome if you're new. Feliz Dia de los Muertos. Today we are doing a collaboration with Pumpkin's Nail Station. If you have not subscribed to her channel, I suggest you do so. She is a magnificent nail lady from the UK. She is super awesome and she puts out a ton of content, a ton of videos. She is ridiculously talented. Go over to Pumpkin's Nail Station and subscribe to her channel for sure. So as I stated, we are doing a Dia de los Muertos, or Day of the Dead inspired set today. So instead of just doing the regular walkthrough of what we are doing, we're going to learn about the Day of the Dead for those of you who don't know. So, if you don't know what Day of the Dead is, it is not Halloween. It's mostly celebrated in Latin America, more of like a Hispanic holiday, not something that's done worldwide. It is celebrated around the South because we do have large Hispanic culture. Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Louisiana, that kind of area. We do have more Hispanics in some areas, so we do celebrate that holiday. And it is not like, I would say, Mexican Halloween. It's not where you dress up and do all of that. It's more of a religious type thing. So we will go into exactly what Day of the Dead is. We'll start with some history. So Day of the Dead originated several thousand years ago with the Aztec, Toltec, and other Navajo people who considered mourning the dead disrespectful. So for these pre-Hispanic cultures, death was a natural phase of life, and they were still members of the community, so they were kept alive in memory and spirit. So during Dia de los Muertos, they temporarily returned to the earth. So today, during our Day of the Dead, the celebration is kind of like a mashup of the pre-Hispanic religious rites and Christian feasts. It takes place over 2 days, November 1st and November 2nd, which in the Catholic religion are All Saints Day and All Souls Day. So basically it's like around the fall maize harvest times. Now for Day of the Dead, though, there is a centerpiece for the celebration, which is an altar, but instead of calling it an altar, if you've seen the Disney movie Coco, it's an ofrenda, and it's built in your homes and in cemeteries. They're not like altar for worshiping or anything like that. They're meant to welcome the spirits back to the realm of the living. So they're like loaded with offerings, water to quench the thirst after the long journey over, like food, family photos, candles for each of the deceased relatives, that kind of thing. And if the spirit was a child, you might find like small toys and things like that. You'll see a lot of marigolds around, and those are kind of like the main flowers that are used to decorate the altar and the area for them on their journey back, to the land of the living. Blech. They're scattered from the altar to grave sites, and around are either the marigold flowers or the petals to guide them, basically guide the wandering souls back to their place of rest, so they can cross over, enter the land of the living, and come back to where their body is rested and their family has left all of their offerings on the altars and the ofrendas for them. There's also, you can have like incense made from like tree resin to transmit praise and prayers and purify the area around the altars, to bring good spirits and good feelings and things like that when, they do cross over and come back. Now, you'll hear a lot of calaveras, which means skulls. During the late 18th and early 19th centuries, Calavera was used to describe short, humorous poems, which were often sarcastic tombstone stuff published in newspapers that poked fun at the living. They eventually became part of Dia de los Muertos celebrations, and today they still practice that. It's actually pretty popular. In about the 20th century, though, there was a Mexican political cartoonist and lithographer, Jose Guadalupe Posada, who created an etching to accompany a literary calavera. Posada dressed his personification of death in fancy French garb, intending it as a social commentary on Mexican society's emulation of European sophistication. A quote that's commonly attributed to Posada means "we are all skeletons," basically stating that underneath all our man-made trappings and all of our possessions, we are all the same. In 1947, there was an artist, Diego Rivera, featured Posada's stylized skeleton in his masterpiece mural, Dream of a Sunday Afternoon, in Alameda Park. Posada's skeleton was dressed in a large feminine hat, and Rivera made his female and named her Katrina, which is basically slang for the rich. Today, the Calavera Katrina, or elegant skull, is the Day of the Dead's most recognized symbol. Now, when it comes to the ofrendas, people will leave different things on there. You do have to remember that Dia de los Muertos is believed that the border between the spirit world and the real world dissolve during those days. That's basically a brief period for the souls of the dead. They awaken and return to the living world to feast, drink, dance, play music, and basically have a festival and party with their loved ones. So the living family members treat their deceased as honored guests in their celebrations. So they will leave the deceased's favorite foods and other offerings on the ofrendas. So sometimes it's their favorite foods or their favorite drinks or water. There is a popular, which is bread, which is pan de muertos, which is decorated with calaveras and bones, and that's also a common thing that's left on the altars, or sugar cookies with sugar skulls on them, and just basic offerings so that when the deceased souls do return, they have plenty for their long journey there and their long journey back. These foods are also kind of typically arranged in like a circle, basically referencing like the circle of life. They'll have little tiny dough, which is in teardrop form to kind of symbolize sorrow, but there's not too much of that because again, it's mostly a celebration of life. Now, popular visual connection between us, I guess, and the holiday itself will always be calaveras and calacas, which are skulls and skeletons. And sugar skulls are basically a part of a sugar art tradition that was brought by the 17th century Italian missionaries. They pressed in molds and decorated with crystalline colors. They came in all sizes and levels of complexity, and that's kind of how we get our sugar skull art of today, where it can be basic dots to anything to rhinestones. I mean, you've seen some of the sugar skulls and some of the people in their makeup and things of that, and they can just be amazing and amazingly detailed. So Day of the Dead is an extremely social holiday, so it does kind of bring a lot of parades, and it can be dancing in the streets, public squares. It's kind of all hours of the day and night. People will dress up as skeletons, people of all ages, and they'll have their faces artfully painted to resemble the skulls and mimic the Calavera Katrina. They put on suits and fancy dresses. I mean, they wear shells or other noisemaker to kind of amp up the excitement, and also to possibly rouse the dead and keep them close during all of the fun, because they want to make sure that the people who have passed from the land of the dead to the land of the living have a good time. It's a celebration for them. Part of some of the decorations in that are going to be the paper crafts that you can see that are all they're usually hanging up along the walls, or they're on the ofrendas. They're the thin paper that have the cutouts of the skulls and the crosses and things like that. You've probably seen them in Mexican restaurants, that kind of thing. But basically, the translation of what they are is pierced paper. It's pretty much what that is. It's cut out of paper. The artisans stack colored tissue paper in dozens of layers and then perforate the layers with hammers and chisels in order to create the decorative look or whatever is on the paper. During the Day of the Dead, they do play an important role in that holiday because they're draped around the ofrendas and in the streets to represent the wind and the fragility of life. So not only are they used for decoration, they do have an actual purpose, for everyone to be able to visually see it. When it comes to today, Day of the Dead has become more popular in the United States, just due to the fact that there is a large Hispanic community, and the numbers are continually increasing, and more people are identifying as or have lineage to Mexican culture. So Day of the Dead is becoming more popular, and we're noticing it more in movies that we see. The first one that I know that I showed my children was The Book of Life. That's actually still one of our favorite movies. In comparison to Coco, they're not the same story, but I like The Book of Life better than I like Coco. Coco is a good story, but I think The Book of Life is more educational. So if you're wanting to maybe introduce your children or somebody to it, suggest The Book of Life. That is a great movie in terms of describing what Day of the Dead is to somebody who doesn't really know much about it. It's not scary, and I know that my kids love it. So just as a suggestion, check out The Book of Life. If you've already seen Coco, definitely check out The Book of Life. It's a fantastic movie. I plug that movie wherever I can, trust me. I'm one of those people. I love that movie. The Book of Life. Fantastic. Okay, so back to more educational items. Traditionally, the Day of the Dead was celebrated largely in the more rural indigenous areas of Mexico, but starting in the 1980s, it began spreading into the cities. The growing awareness of the holiday in 2008, Mexico added indigenous festivity dedicated to the dead to its list of cultural heritage of humanities. So basically, Day of the Dead was added as an official holiday. Recent years, the tradition has developed even more due to its visibility in pop culture and its growing popularity in the United States. More than 36 million people identify as being of partial or full Mexican ancestry as of 2016, according to the U.S. Census Bureau. So like I was saying earlier, more and more Hispanic people in the United States. Inspired by the 2015 James Bond movie, Spectre, which featured a large Day of the Dead parade, Mexico City held its first ever parade for the holiday in 2016. And then in 2017, a number of major U.S. cities, including Chicago, Los Angeles, San Antonio, and Fort Lauderdale, held Day of the Dead parades. That November, Disney and Pixar released their blockbuster animated hit, Coco. which was a $175 million movie, which highlighted the Mexican tradition of Day of the Dead. So, as you see, it is becoming more and more popular. And if you have not heard of Day of the Dead yet, you definitely should learn more about it and watch those movies. So I greatly appreciate you watching this video. Go over to Pumpkin's Nail Station and watch her video. And please subscribe, like the video, and we'll see you next time.